All right. So, God, and she said, "Hello, everyone. We're recording." Um, so I haven't done a video for YouTube in I don't know, like a year or something specifically. But because I saw this, uh, this
We
video
were talking
on
about Ayaan
YouTube,
Hirsi Ali, and it's an interesting
I thought
detour,
I
but
should
I did
probably
want to ask you about this vision
comment
of religion
about it on
for
YouTube.
two reasons.
So, and just to prove I can still do a video worth watching, because I'm really out of practice. What we have here, hello, my name is Cameron. This is my YouTube channel, which I almost never go to anymore. It is January 11th, 2024. I saw this video about Jordan Peterson. I'm a fanboy. What can I say? I also like to think I'm very versed in the things his corpus, and I can tell the difference between what he religiously believes, and what he believes as a professor of psychology and as a analytical psychologist, and how he sometimes interweaves his psychological understanding of the world and his symbolic religious understanding of the world culturally, and how they map onto each other, maps of meaning, versus, and how they're separate, versus, what he scientifically believes, what he scientifically is saying belongs here in science, and what he says probably doesn't belong in science, per se, more culturally. I don't know. And so when I watched this video, it was disappointing. And here's the thing: is I used to be a huge fan of Richard Dawkins. I'm still a fan. I still appreciate who he is, what he's accomplished, and a lot of things he's done in the past. And I watched the Jordan Peterson, Richard Dawkins interview, and I thought it went a lot better than I thought it was going to go. But I didn't like this this clip. I don't know Alex O'Connor very well. I've seen him a few times. He's some sort of weird atheist intellectual. He's got a British accent, so I think it sounds a lot smarter than it might actually be. I've watched one video with him with Chris, and he mentions Chris in this one. And he talks about certain paradoxes, which are interesting, which I myself might care to philosophize about for a minute or two, and explore the depths of linguistics and the meaning and life and blah, 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 right? All right. But at some point, you're just a pompous ass. If being my friend, want to be a pompous ass when we're drinking some beer, and talk about something to no end beyond any real usefulness, hey. But at a certain point, if we do that, and trust me, me and my friends have once or twice, more than once. If we do that at a party, it might seem a little interesting at first, but people are going to start to say, "What the fuck are those jackasses talking about?" Right? And we're not going to be that popular. My friend wasn't. So you got to understand that there's a point when philosophy and philosophizing become the same bullshit of everybody else's bullshit. At a point, that this kid, this young man, this fellow, is probably really bright, probably 10 times better read than me. Who knows? And he takes his craft, his profession, his calling in life very seriously, like a welder or a carpenter or art. Okay, I get that. But like scientists, and atheists often do, they spend too much time in the lab, Robert Sapolsky, with the white coat on, and doing experiments and mathematics in a room that is dead, is just whiteboards, ink, computers, and fucking scientists. Not a very good representation of the world. And the work they do in those little rooms or those places tend to become their reality, and they forget that reality is actually out here where we're living, And their interpretation, their theories about it, their representations of reality can never actually be reality. It's only the map of reality. And the map can never be the place. It's a map of the place. And it's always going to be less resolution, less detailed, less accurate than the actual place. You lose something. You're going to always lose something in the map versus being there in space and time. Many scientists fall prey to this information is real. The universe is just information, nothing else. Get the fuck out of here, right? Get the fuck out of here, right? Metaphorically, sure. Actually, no. Right? It's just weird how they fall into these. Is math real or discovered? Or is it created or discovered? Right? Well, that's an interesting question. I don't give a fuck. The number 4 on a piece of paper, well, the ink's real. The symbol's real. My understanding of what that symbol means about amount of, things on a table, 4 cups, 4, abstractly real. I think you discover math. I do think that you discover math more than you create math. Because you can't create a system where 2 plus 2 is 5, and map it onto our reality at least. I mean, you're going to say, no. There's only 4 things on the table, not 5. You can't create a math that makes sense. It's logically consistent, right? You can't create a logically consistent math unless it's yeah. See what I'm saying? So it's probably discovered. It's something that's discovered that relates to the universe accurately. Okay. Let's listen to these guys. I want you to listen to about 2 or 3 minutes of this, because I don't like how Dawkins talks about Jordan Peterson. All right, I don't care for it. I'll tell you why after we listen.
This idea.
Hey, all right.
Very well known at the moment. We were talking about Ayaan Hirsi Ali, and it's an interesting detour, but I did want to ask you about this vision of religion for 2 reasons. This idea that religion, we don't really care about the question of whether it's true that Jesus was born of a virgin or whether he actually died on a cross. In fact, maybe I'm just going to refuse to answer it altogether and say that this is a cultural thing. It's a way of life. It's a motivating reason behind your behaviors. I think that this has got a lot to do with its popularization through people like Jordan Peterson. Ayaan Hirsi Ali seems to have been spending some time with Jordan Peterson and getting on with him, at least in this regard. And I want to ask you about it for 2 reasons. Firstly, I want to know, you had a conversation with Jordan Peterson. It was for about an hour and a half, where you talked about some culture stuff, but he's very well known at the moment. He's writing a book at the moment for talking about religion. And he comes at it from this completely different perspective to, I imagine, the perspective that most of your previous Christian opponents, not that Jordan Peterson is strictly a Christian, have come at it from. And I wonder what you make of him and his approach.
I enormously respect his courage in standing up to the Canadian laws about free speech. So I want to just get that out of the way first. I hugely respect that and value him for that reason. When he talks about religion, I think it's bullshit. I think that he doesn't make any sense at all. I think he's impressing people by using language they don't understand.
Okay, so I don't know how much Richard Dawkins actually knows of Jordan Peterson's discussions about religion. He talks about like Cain and Abel all the time, like a little too much. You get a little the Cain and Abel again. Are we going there again? I get that. He's not talking about religion there, though. He's talking about symbolism and what that story is trying to relate about the world as it concerns humans and their behavior in reality and what that story represents. Talking about resentment and these things that we all know poison our hearts and makes us do stupid things, and how to combat that in reality. And this has been a problem since the beginning of civilized man, because that's how old Cain and Abel's story is. But this is why it still needs to be said, because it refers to these things about human nature and how we can best deal with them in a way that works for most people. That's not talking about religion, all right? Just because it's got a Bible story in it, it's not saying anything about religion. It's saying something about this story, all right? And why this story is still relevant and has survived all these centuries as it has. You see, that's... Oh, hello. Are we still there? So this is what they're missing. But I want you to hear a little more.
Rather like Deepak Chopra, where people think, oh, it must be terribly profound because I can't understand it, which is not something I can respect. Michael Shermer told me that he tried to pin him down and said, do you actually believe that Jesus was born of a virgin? And Jordan Peterson said, it would take me at least 2 days to answer that. So Michael said more or less, well, how about one sentence or one word? No. And that's how I feel about it.
Michael Sherbert, so it's not ironic that he mentioned Michael Sherbert, who's an atheist, who has a magazine called not the Suspect, but the Skeptic. He has a magazine called The Skeptic. He's an atheist. He's not very bright. I don't mind Michael Shermer, right? He's no right guy. He's never impressed me with his thought processes or his arguments about why he's atheist that much. I think Dawkins and Sam Harris are much better at being skeptics of certain things than Michael Shermer. But he's got a magazine or something, and he's made a living doing it. So you don't have to be smart to be atheist, or you don't have to be dumb to be a Christian. You can be dumb on both sides of those aisles. I find Michael Shermer, as far as it concerns belief in God or not, to be unimpressive. That's me. And I've seen him talk on Joe Rogan with Hancock and those others about ancient civilizations, aliens, and all these stuff. And he gets even more unimpressive there because he's such a homer for academia, and toting the line like a good atheist would, that he's just not impressive to me. I'm not trying to insult the guy. I think he's an okay dude. I mean, he's reasonable sometimes, but his capacity to go beyond base is not really there now. Now Dawkins here. So that's who Michael Shermer is. And so Dawkins is talking about a conversation Jordan Peterson had with Shermer as to why his opinion about everything Jordan Peterson has done is shit because of one answer in one conversation to some fucking tote the line atheist. Ugh. Really? Come on, Richard. Now, let's forgive Richard that. All right? I think he still has to say. Let's hear it.
About that. All the stuff about Jungian archetypes, and not that I would be skeptical about that, but constantly dragging them in. I mean, I think the most egregious example of that is where he looks at works of primitive art, works of tribal art, where he shows things like two snakes coiling around each other and says, well, they must have had some primitive, primeval knowledge of DNA. Perhaps they looked into their own cells in some sense and saw the DNA.
Wait, so this is the problem I have. This is the core of my problem with Richard Dawkins' view about Jordan Peterson. Jordan Peterson has been a professor of psychology at the University of Toronto for 15 to 20 years. 20 years, I think. Practicing clinologist. I'm never going to say it. A clinician. A practicing clinician of psychology for 15, 20 years. Before he got the limelight and the display of mass media, not a single complaint. Now for 15, 20 years, not a single complaint. student, client, doesn't matter. He was also a teacher at Harvard before Toronto, a research. Most of his 80s was spent researching alcoholism and, it affects on society and things of that nature. He's done lots of great work in science and in the field of science. That has nothing to do with religion. Dawkins wants to throw all that away, as if it was all just shit psychology or shit work. Not one of the most cited psychologists in research, right? Is he? Because he is one of the most cited doctors or teachers, whatever, professors, whatever, scientists in his field. One of the most cited, right? By other psychologists in his field of science, which Richard Dawkins is part of science. You don't get to just say he's saying fucking smart shit that people don't understand, motherfucker. Or maybe you are too. Sorry. Right? Well, how do we know, Mr. Dawkins, that you're just not saying a bunch of things people don't understand about genes and them being greedy and them going, oh, well, I don't understand any of that, so you must be right. How do we know you're not the charlatan? Right? Oh, you could prove it? You couldn't in 1920, though. In 1920, you couldn't have proved it. 1880, you couldn't have proved it. But you can prove it now because of technology? Okay. Well, how do we know these fringe things Dr. Peterson is exploring, mentally researching? You're taking it all wrong, you fucking jackass. This is not that. Oh, that is not who Jordan Peterson is, Richard Dawkins and Mr. Alex O'Connor. You're speaking out of your ass because you're taking this fringe idea a researcher has, a scientist has, about possibilities, right? And he's wondering if there isn't more to something. And he's researching an area that, yeah, it's fringe. It's probably not true. He's probably fucking wrong, and he'll probably tell you that. But it's this little hunch, and he's like, I wonder, is there something more left about, And look, Dawkins, if you research Michael Levin and bioelectricity, unbelievable what this guy is doing experimentationally in the labs with bioelectricity. Unbelievable. To the point that I bet Richard Dawkins, if you tell Richard Dawkins 5 years ago what Michael Levin is doing right now with bioelectricity and the effects it's having, he'd probably go, that sounds like bullshit. Sounds like bullshit. There's no way a two-headed a mutant, right? Like Michael Levin can take a flatworm, which are generally immortal because they can regenerate. If you cut them up to 200 pieces, 200 little flatworms will come out of it. Michael Levin will, through bioelectricity, repeatedly make a two-headed flatworm, right? Not messing with the genes, not messing with the RNA or DNA or nothing, but just through messing with their bioelectricity, he can get a worm, cut its head off to regenerate two heads. A two-headed flatworm never ever seen before in the natural world. All right, that two-headed worm will reproduce two-headed worms. I don't know how they reproduce, but that's what Michael says, right? So you have a thing that was, the DNA isn't altered, the RNA isn't altered, the genes are not altered. It's all the same genes. And through another process, bioelectricity, change the structure of that species into a two-headed flatworm instead of one, and it will now reproduce two-headed flatworms, even though the genes and the DNA isn't any different. And if you damage that offspring, cut its head off, it'll grow back two heads. But as soon as Michael takes any of the offspring, he can now change that offspring back into a one-headed flatworm. And that flatworm will never know the difference. And the genes and the DNA never change. It's a whole new field. It's a whole nother level that this dude would say is bullshit 5 years ago. I swear to God he would. I know Dawkins pretty well, right? The genes have nothing to do with the species. Well, no, that can't be true. Maybe it is. Maybe the genes in the DNA simply dictate what type of biological equipment you're going to have for your biological form. What type of nanotubes, what type of enzymes, what type of proteins are going to be available to you to maintain the form or species, but it has nothing to do with actually the form of the species. That's going to throw such a loop in his fucking theory. And he would say it's bullshit, but Michael Levin is doing it. So that's science. For another scientist, Richard Dawkins, right, to talk out his ass about another respected scientist because he's religious is bullshit. And to take the fringe theory Jordan Peterson has, he's exploring different possibilities and seeing if they're valid. And so he went to Richard Dawkins, the world's renowned gene expert, the greedy gene, wrote the book on genes and the greedy gene and memes. The word memes, right? We use as internet fucking ideas. He created that word and that theory and that and what everything. That's him. This guy right here. Good dude. Peterson went there with this fringe thought he's been working, in his head. It has nothing to do with his work. Sorry. He's not putting papers out there in science talking about this. He's trying to talk with the world's greatest gene guys. How fucking stupid am I? And Richard Dawkins kind of went, "Oh, you're kind of stupid. I don't think it goes that deep. I don't think it goes that far." Okay. Maybe Dawkins didn't understand that Jordan was kind of, was doing research, right? Maybe Dawkins didn't realize Jordan was actually looking for information, not interviewing him. See, Dawkins is used to people interviewing him, and when they interview him, try to get him to say something stupid, right? Because that's just the way they go, right? Jordan isn't that way. Jordan actually went there because he wanted to talk to Richard, the greatest, mind and gene, or what, and learn from him. I don't think Dawkins realized that. I think Dawkins thought it was more adversarial and to challenge him. Right? And I get that. I get that why Dawkins might think that, right? I totally do. And so I can forgive Dawkins because I think he still thinks Jordan came there with some sort of theory he thought was real versus Jordan coming there to say, "Hey, what do you think about this? Am I just crazy?" Like, not adversarially, friendly. I don't think Dawkins gets that. I think Dawkins is too used to the old school assholes, old school confrontationals, old school let me prove you wrong so I can make the news, right? Challenge. That's not Jordan Peterson, man. Jordan Peterson wanted your opinion. How crazy am I? Is this close? Is this real? And I think because Richards is just from a different age, time, paradigm of interviewers. He just didn't realize then, still doesn't now, that Jordan was actually wanting his opinion about something crazy, understands it's crazy, understands it's fringe, says, yeah, it's probably not. So that's why Jordan was there, was because he thought this idea is probably wrong, but he wanted to explore it. It's not its corpus. It has nothing to do with its current or past science. It's something he's exploring now to see if it goes anywhere. I don't think Richard realized that. I like Richard. I think Dawkins is a great person. He's flawed. Everybody's flawed. So I try not to hold these. My love for Jordan Peterson. Oh, he's my boo. I try not to let that get to me too much because I get insulted for Jordan. Because I defend Richard Dawkins the same. I've always liked Richard Dawkins. He's a good dude. So he says something stupid every now and then. Just because you're a scientist with an IQ of probably like 180 doesn't mean you don't ever say something stupid or hold certain stupid beliefs about stuff because of your past experiences. And trust me, I'm pretty sure his past experiences with reporters justifies his attitude. I get that. I think he thought that interview Jordan did was more adversarial, more of a challenge so Jordan can make some headlines, not Jordan coming to him out with an absolute respect for his opinion and his words and his thoughts. And I think that shows here, right? It might be too late because Jordan did call him out on something because, like me, Jordan's a loudmouth. But this interview right now, Alex O'Connor, nobody's going to see this. Nobody's going to take my word for it or give a fuck what I think about Jordan Peterson and this and Richard Dawkins. Probably. But in case it does, in case this concerns religious people or scientific people, Richard Dawkins has it wrong. Doesn't understand Jordan Peterson is not a charlatan. Chopak, he is not Chopak. All right? Jordan is not trying to twist quantum field theory into some sort of religious dogma. He's not doing that, Dawkins. Richard, he's not doing that. All right? I understand Chopka. I've been there. I lived it with you, Dawkins. How you and Sam just tore the shit out of that motherfucker. Yeah, oh my God. Yeah, there are aspects of quantum field theory that are suggestive of a lot of weird stuff, a lot of crazy stuff from that theory. You could conjure up or extrapolate out or whatever and say, oh, well, that explains all sorts of weird shit, but it probably doesn't. I don't know. It's not that easy. You don't get to just do that. I do that to Robert Sapolsky, right? So I'm not innocent of taking quantum field theory and using it as an argument why somebody might be wrong, because it's such a crazy fucking theory. Nobody really knows. So maybe you're right. But anyways, quantum field theory has actual true randomness in it. A random number is hard to come up with. Randomness doesn't exist in a deterministic universe, except for quantum field theory. Well, if it exists there in quantum field theory somehow, without breaking, the universe, maybe enough of that exists in our size. We're in between the huge and the tiny. You want to see? Maybe something about quantum field theory and the quantum mechanics might open the door enough so that I have free will and some control over my destiny in a way that isn't so crushingly deterministic. All right. So that's just what I want to say. By the way, I'm available for interviews, podcasts, and the schedule's really open right now. All right, everyone. Thank you for watching. Leave a comment if you like. I don't really fucking care. I'm trying to get something started on Rumble, a more live, Spokane-orientated live stream thing. I'm sucking really hard at it. It's a lot more difficult than these. But anyways, that was just a quick thought. Have a good day, everyone.